Welcome to Career Cravings with your hosts, Dev Ramcharan and Megan Reed. If you crave a better and more satisfying career, this show is for you. We're broadcasting live on Bold Radio Station every week. Now, here are your hosts, Dev and Megan.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Career Cravings this evening. We've got a great show lined up this evening with me, your host, Megan Reed. Dev Ramcharan, my co-host, is away this week, so I've got my partner, Laura Hambley. Dr. Laura Hambley is co-hosting with me today, and we've got a really exciting guest as well. So Suzanne West is our guest, and she's the president and CEO of Imaginia Energy. She has opened a number of companies, successful companies over the last 15 years and really built them from scratch. And right now, she's building an energy company. And really it's exciting because her values are around the planet, people, and profits. And those are really equal values for her. So I'm super excited to have her on the show. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So just to get us started and kind of get our listeners to know a bit more about you, can you start off just by telling us a bit about your career and kind of how you got to where you are today?
That's a long story, so I'm going to give you the short version. But the highlights are, I come from kind of a lower middle class where I didn't really have any mentors either in the corporate world or really even in the entrepreneurship world. But I became an engineer. So this is to just give you a flavor of where I came from. When I decided to be an engineer and I told my grandmother, she asked me, honey, why do you want to drive a train? So I come from a background that isn't necessarily very familiar with some non-traditional roles, let's just say. So I became an engineer. I joined Imperial Oil right out of school. And because I hadn't really had any background or experience in the corporate world, when I first joined, command and control organizational model, I literally thought it was so bizarre and somebody had actually perhaps dragged us out of the dark ages. So it never made sense to me that, you hired smart, talented, resourceful people, and then you felt you had to tell them what to do, when to do, and how to do it all the time. That just seemed kind of incongruent to me. And that command and control organizational models was not the way to tap into the amazing potential of human beings in terms of their innovation, their collaboration, their ability, their ingenuities. It didn't seem like this was going, to really hit it out of the park. So I was an organizational rebel for many years because I was young and naive, and I've always had a certain level of boldness about myself, thinking I could turn the Queen Mary around. Let's just say that I was not successful in doing that. But in the world of what was really amazing, because I truly believe that we are the designers of our lives and that every experience that we have contributes, to who we are and the richness of our lives. So what Imperial gave me, the two super positive things were they taught me to be a really awesome technical person because, hey, back then they expected you to actually stay there for your whole career. And the second thing was they really taught me discipline around economics, which unfortunately is not really that pervasive in the world today. People don't even really understand that you shouldn't spend what you don't make. So, but anyways, in terms of, so really positive things, but as well as I saw, some of the negative impacts of command and control, I really started to crystallize, a deeper and deeper desire to do this organizational model that I sort of had intuitively in my head. I don't really know where it ever came from. It's just always been there, but it's based in kind of four main aspects. One is I always thought that you should be able to run an organization without middle management, that for the most part, they didn't actually add, but they mostly detracted. They were an opportunity to mostly say no and for people to feel like, accountability was taken away from them. So I always thought that if you could teach people how to make good decisions, how to understand how they contributed to the vision of a company, to understand how they impacted others and how others impacted them, then they would actually be the best ones to make the decision. You didn't have to have layers of other people, doing that for them. And to just build this really strong culture of accountability that would absolutely, because they would be the best ones to make it. They're on the ground, they're in real time, they're the ones likely most familiar, with the circumstances. So that was kind of its first aspect. The second one, I saw in traditional command and control organizations this, deep, stuckness by being in structure and process all the time, more importantly over what was needed. So it's like, this is the process we've had for 10 years, and I'm pretty sure, we're going to do it for the next 10 years, as opposed to if you could teach people to understand these great adaptation skills to sort of know when to change and when not to change, and to have this passion and this excitement for improvement rather than this angst around, oh my God, we've got to change that, or that it's like, listen, this process is not working, we should kill it. And not to feel like bad about that, but excited because in a healthy ecosystem, stuff dies that isn't healthy for the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third aspect was in traditional command and control organizations, it was quite dismaying to me that I saw just these silos of everything. I mean, I'm a very collaborative person by nature, and I can intellectualize, external competition where it, kind of fires you up, keeps you on your game, continuously improves. But I have seriously never, ever understood internal competition. It is poison in an organization. When you have, competing groups for either budgets or, self-serving goals and different teams. And I would see it all the time. It's like, aren't we playing on the same team? And yet it would be not that apparent that you were, because we did not have this overarching, we made choices for the greater good. You'd never hear, oh, your project's better than mine, we should do yours. Like, you would just never hear that, because command and control organization model fundamentally moves people to essentially protect themselves and promote themselves at the expense of others. That's just what it naturally does. It gravitates to. And it was absolutely destructive to collaboration. It was destructive to making choices for the greater good in the system. So that if you could teach people, this wholeness aspect of understanding that everybody was connected, everybody was part of the system that was, headed, this is where the ship is going, and to have us, row in that same direction, and to have these deep levels of collaboration and transparency and sharing across an organization. Oh my God, I just thought you could shoot the lights out. And then the fourth aspect with regards to, it was super dismaying to me that somehow the industrial age did a disservice to human beings, is that it turned us from humans into workers, and that we're told just to bring your professional side, whatever that means, to work, and leave all this personal, stuff behind, is that it wasn't either appropriate or it wasn't relevant. It never made sense to me. We're like whole people. We're physical, emotional, mental, spiritual people. And if you don't think the fight you had with your significant other in the morning impacts your productivity, or if your boss tears the strip off you during the day, it doesn't impact, your kids at home. Like, we're whole people. We can't just sort of separate ourselves like that. It's unhealthy. And why would you want to? Like, to me, the genius of humans is when we bring their wholeness to work, when we tap into that extraordinary thing that they were born to do. Everybody has a mojo that you were born on this planet to do something really special, and you were given gifts to do that. Why wouldn't we take the time to find out what those are in people and then build their roles around it, rather than just give people tasks and tell them to do them and hope they don't make mistakes? Like, it's just such a low level of what a human is capable of, that I just thought if you could put, to me, traditional organizational models really put people in their unnatural states. Now, remember, these are just my opinions. That doesn't make them right or wrong. But I believe that we are naturally hardwired to be productive. We want to show up and do a good job. That, I think, that's just part of being, a normal human. I believe we're naturally trustworthy, and I believe we're naturally connected to each other and want to help each other. I think those are three kind of extraordinary parts of being a human. And yet traditional organizational models kind of put you in the opposite. When you walk into a traditional command and control organizational model, the number one message they give you is, we don't trust you. That's why we have to have all these controls on, to make sure that, God forbid, you ever make a mistake, or you take 2 more minutes for coffee. Like, seriously strange stuff that they would have to, do that, and that they put people in silos. They don't let people connect. Don't tell that person this, or it's like, no, that's not your job. It's like, what? Like there's just, and when we have to rely on carrots or sticks, to get productivity out of people, as opposed to when we touch people and get them motivated in their hearts and their souls that they want to, it's like they'll show up and they'll do 10 times more work than you'd ever thought that they would do anyways, because they care, like they really care. Anyways, I'm talking too much. So I had these kind of 4 aspects of this. So I left Imperial and I went to, I got recruited by another large major, but it was run by this crazy, amazing entrepreneur out of the States. And he was a maverick, man. He didn't do anything normal, which is what I loved about him. And his really dream was, how do we make big companies operate like small companies? So it was like, wow, this is, because I wanted to go to a place that either I could try this entrepreneurial or this model I had in my head, something more entrepreneurial. So I told him, I said, well, I got this model in my head. I really think we can run organizations different. And he said, listen, I don't care how you make me money. And so he gave me enough rope to hang myself with. And so my organizational model was really kind of birthed at golf when I was there. And oh my God, it was so much fun. I tried every crazy idea that I had. Hey, not all of them worked, but that was really the place that I got to see what happens when you let people operate in this world, and it rocks. It was amazing. But they fired him because he was a bit too much of a maverick, and I was not far behind. So when I got fired from golf and half of my team, I said to the COO at the time, who was my boss, I said, so let me get this straight, because we were like beating our stretch targets, people were happy and productive, etc. I said, so let me get this straight. You're firing me because we're doing better than everybody else? And he said, no, we're firing you because you're doing it different than everybody else. And it was like, seriously, the lowest part of my whole career when I finally realized that nobody really cared about, being different and harnessing this amazing potential that we were wasting in traditional. And I'm not necessarily proud, but I started my first company mostly because I was mad. I just was so frustrated. It's like, God, why doesn't anyone get this? And so, again, that's not necessarily a really good reason to start your first company, but I did anyways. And because I felt like the rug had kind of been pulled out from underneath me. So I was like, screw it. So I remortgaged my house, busted open all my piggy banks. I literally rolled the whole dice. And thank God I got fired from golf because, oh my God, since then, I was building stuff. So I built, 4 companies. Well, I'm on my 5th. And I love building stuff from zero because it's just fun. And it has been, my organizational model has really kind of evolved over the last, 15, 7, I don't know, 20, how long it's been, many years. But it has been very cool. And now imagining, I'm sure you're going to ask me about that one, so I won't start on that one question.
Well, we will. We definitely will get into the companies, and I'm very excited to learn more specifically about Imaginia. Before we go that far in your career, I guess I even want to take you back to an earlier point where you're saying right from the beginning you were an organizational rebel. And I think it's clear in what you're saying and just the way you're sharing your story. You are a very innovative and creative person. And I think what you hit on with your time at golf, where you're hitting these targets, you are blowing the results out of the water, yet you're doing it differently. And that's not okay, which I think is ridiculous because I think really that productivity and outcome is what's important. But I guess I'm wondering, coming from that engineering background, even that, middle class or lower middle class upbringing, where do you think this part of you or this drive around innovation and being a rebel, where did that come from, Suzanne?
It's an excellent question, often asked. So I wish I had a really fantastic, for sure answer. I can only tell you what I sort of intuit is that it did not get nurtured. Like I come from my mom and dad thought I was completely nuts. I actually think my mother might have phoned like a psychologist to come and like help me. They love me, but they think I'm crazy. So it did not get nurtured. I did not come from that background. So I'm going to intuit that it was one of the beautiful gifts that I got born with, is sort of a fairly good dose of lack of fear. And I've always just seen the world as possibility. That's how the world occurs to me. I just look at it in a different way. the life is extraordinary to me. I look at it as just things to be created. I just look at things that, wow, what if we could do that? What if we could do that? It just doesn't occur to me that you can't. Now, I have to go through, once I have crazy ideas and I have to figure out how to get them done. But in their initial formative stages, I just love creating. I think we were born to be creators. Some of us, hopefully have some. I love writing poetry. I love all forms of, creation. I teach fitness classes. I like making crazy new moves that people think, where in the crap did you think of that? So it's just fun to do that. So I'm just going to go with, it's just something, it was a beautiful gift that the universe gave me.
Okay, so really what I'm getting from you right off the bat, in addition to that kind of innovation, creativity, is that you have a wide variety of interests. If you are going from the engineering world, the business world, the energy world, you're a fitness instructor, you really have a lot of things on the go. And I think we'll get in a little bit later to how do you manage all these different things. But I guess really to cut to the chase and get to where you are now, can you give us a bit of information or background on Imaginia and how this came to be? How did you come up with this idea, and how did you decide to move forward with it?
So I've built 4 companies in the oil and gas world, having fun with my organization model, et cetera. But I've mostly been kind of living in a bubble because, the old world just clearly wasn't kind of working for me. So I just created my own world. And I was actually probably going to retire after my 4th company because there are many things in my industry that are just offensive to me, really. So hey, don't get me wrong, I love men, but some of the testosterone level is just, very difficult when it's of that negative. Like, I've sat across tables of people that are just intent on win-lose scenarios, like absolutely intent on them. The greed, and the way that we do the environment, there's just so many things that I just wasn't that crazy about. So I was thinking about doing that. However, the universe decided, no, that's actually not what you're supposed to do, Suzanne. So I got myself invited to a leadership gathering that Richard Branson has on his private island in the Caribbean, where he invites Oxford academics and entrepreneurs from around the world. And it's a think tank type setting of how do we make a bigger difference in the world. So that, of course, sounded like Mecca to me. So I got myself invited, and I was going to just go hang around with super amazing people and just absorb and be inspired about, what to do in the world. But when you get there, Richard, who is an amazing human being, by the way, challenges you that at the end of the week, he wants you to declare what you're going to do when you go back to your own community, to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of reframed the week for me from again, potentially embarrassing to say, I was going to go get a whole bunch of things. It was all of a sudden going, wow, I actually got to really think about what I'm going to contribute here. So, and through the week, it was, how in life that stuff, but then there are these moments in life where all of a sudden, you really hear it. You hear it at a, kind of a cellular level, and this was this week for me. So if you had interviewed me before I went to Necker, I would have said, yeah, I kind of know this stuff. But as you sit there and listen to these really smart scientists talk about, we have 1 billion people without food and clean water on this earth. How did we get there? We're destroying the largest ecosystem in the world, in the Amazon rainforest. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, it was like a ton of bricks that I literally all of a sudden heard. We are consuming our planet in an unhealthy way, unsustainably. We cannot keep doing this, period. And that became sort of in that moment, it was really kind of unacceptable to me. So, and we didn't just talk about the problems, we talked about solutions. And one of the biggest solutions they talked about was if we could raise standard of living, we could start to make some, dents into some of these problems. Well, energy, is a third of standard of living. When you give people light and heat, it changes their world. So I'm sitting there going, oh, hang on. My industry actually could be part of the solution. And yet, clearly, we're likely not right now. So then it was kind of that's very interesting. But then through the week as well, my entrepreneurial juices started kicking in. And it was hang on. We have separated society in every unhealthy way that we can imagine. Race, religion, gender, politics, like you name it. In my industry, you're either a crazy tree hugger or you're a greedy capitalist. Those are your two options. Pick your camps, then we got to fight about it, see who wins and loses. And I'm sitting there going, is there some rule book that says I cannot make amazing profits and not wreck the planet at the same time? I'm sitting there going, no, I don't think there's some rule book that says I can't do that. So then it was like, and as an entrepreneur, I like hanging out in the space that other people aren't. It's just fun. So I'm sitting there going,
we can tell.
I think we have been missing this amazing opportunity of smashing energy and environment together as, part of the fabric of who we are, not just as this, we should do this for moral compass or reputation, but it's like, no, this is an opportunity waiting to be had. So then I started getting, okay, I'm on the track of something here. And I can just feel it. Those entrepreneurs out there listening, you know what I'm talking about. But the really important moments that week, and sorry, they're very personal, so I'm hoping every time I try not to cry, and most of the times I cry anyway. So, but through the week, I recognized all of a sudden that, and it is, let me assure you, I was deeply humbled when all of a sudden through the week, I realized that there was more that I could do that I was not. And that was crazy humbling to me, because I've always been hardware. I'm always interested in what I can do. I always have been since the time I've had consciousness. I'm just interested in what else I can do. And I don't care whether it's this high or this high. I just want to know what that is, like constantly like pushing the boundaries. I want to be the person on your deathbed saying, did you leave it all on the table? And I want to say, absolutely. So all of a sudden when I realized that in my mental construct, I had been going to hang around super cool people. And yet through the week, I realized I was actually giving as well. I was the only engineer there. I was the only Canadian there. I was certainly the only oil and gas person there. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I actually have more to give than I realized. And then that was humbling for me to going, oh my God, I have not been putting it all on the table. So that kind of really fired me up. But the most important moment was, so I have a deep spiritual practice. So on Friday morning meditation, as I'm trying to contemplate, okay, what does more look like? Because I'm also a very accountable person. Whatever I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. So I sit in there in my meditation. It's like, okay, what does this look like? And oh my God, it was literally easily in the top, 3 moments of my life ever, that in a moment I knew, crystal clarity, what I needed to do. Like, it was like, it's this moment when you realize what you were born to do. And it is, I can only share, there's not even English words to describe that moment and what that meant to me. But I wake up every morning and it's like it just happened. I cannot not do this. And so I got up that morning to Richard and that group, and I declared that I was going home to change my industry. And I came home and I wrote a manifesto called Project Step Up, because I told myself I had to step up my game. And it's about how do we create a new kind of energy company that values, planet, people, and profit, all three, not just one or one and a half. And so I knew I was going to do this. So I was running Blackshire, my fourth company at the time. So I thought, well, I'll sell Blackshire. I'll take some time off and figure out, how I'm going to do this. But the universe decided, no, that wasn't the answer either. So in August, this was in February of 2013 when I was at Necker Island. And in August of that year, I had an opportunity to go and live in Ecuador for 2.5 weeks with indigenous people to learn how they live in harmony with Mother Nature. And good Lord, if Richard didn't, change my life, this was like the bookend of holy cow. The indigenous people really taught me what and means. I know it in my cells. The jungle taught it to me. And I saw the devastation. I came back from Necker. I knew the world needed to change, but I came back from Ecuador and I knew it needed to change now. I did not have the luxury of figuring out how I was going to do this, but we have got to start making some different choices for our future, or the future that lies ahead of us is not one I'm not really that crazy about. So I sold Blackshire November 5th of that year, and I started Imaginea November 5th. So Imaginea stands for Imagine a New Way of Doing Business. And seriously, I've always had fun in my life, but I have never, ever had this much fun, ever. It has been an amazing journey. It's been 3 years in, and the response that we have had, I still got a boatload of things to figure out, but we are on our way to producing clean hydrocarbons. I'm going to create a brand new industry of clean hydrocarbons where we produce them without emissions, without pollution, without the use of fresh water. We are going to change our relationship to, how we participate in this energy world. And I'm hoping lots of people come with me. If they don't, whatever, I'm doing it anyway. So that's the short story of Imaginea.
Wow, Suzanne. So I'm just amazed and entertained, and you just have such a great humor about you and a great passion. And you really came to that moment of what you were meant to do. But what advice would you have for other people who are really struggling with what they're meant to do? And maybe they don't have that opportunity to go to the island with Richard Branson, which would be pretty spectacular in terms of experience. But what would you recommend to people who are struggling to find that type of meaning and purpose?
We tell people, because it's actually part of who we want you to be at Imaginea, is I want you to find your mojo. Everybody, so your mojo is what I call the intersection of what you absolutely love to do, what you are ridiculously good at, and what brings you meaning and satisfaction. That's your mojo. That's the gift. That's the uniqueness, this extraordinary capabilities that you brought that you should be doing in the world. And so we have an exercise that we basically get people to do. I'm happy to send that to you if that's helpful. But the short version is you basically kind of draw 3 circles, and you just think about, it's a stream of consciousness exercise that you literally think about going, what are all the things like I totally love to do? And just write them down, put them in bullet points, etc. And then you go, what are the things I totally rock? And this is something that sometimes you can't always think of these yourselves because they're so natural to you. You don't even think they're extraordinary until somebody says, oh my God, how do you do that? It's like, I don't know, can anybody do that? So get somebody else to help you as well, people that care about you, and same thing, stream of what are those things? And then write down the things that literally touch you at your soul level. What are the things that move you? What are the things you would do regardless if people gave you reward or recognition? And write those things down, and then sort of stare at this like one of those 3D pictures that if you stare at it in a picture, all of a sudden shows up, and look for what is the one thing that has all 3 components. I guarantee everybody has one. I will help you find it if you need to, because we help people all the time, is to find this mojo. And then the important thing is, find out who you really are and then go do something about it. It's sort of a tragedy. I see some people actually find out what they were kind of, meant to do, and then they just won't do anything. It's like, come on, no. You must be courageous now. You must go and do it. That's like, well, I can't make a career out of that, or I can't. It's like, no, don't give me all the excuses as to why you don't want to be extraordinary. Just go do it, right? So that's my advice, is to really find out who you are. Look inside, find out what you love to do, what you are exceptional at, and bring you meaning and purpose. Find that one thing that has all 3 of those. That's it. And then go do something about it.
Really well put. Yeah. And that's half the battle, is figuring it out. But the other half is actually doing something. And you really have exemplified that in your career, Suzanne. And I just want to touch on the point earlier about the command and control environment. And we get a lot of people through our doors at Canada Career Counseling who are in workplaces that are toxic, workplaces that they're not finding meaning and don't have passion within. So what advice do you have for people trying to get out of those environments but really feeling stuck?
Another excellent question. So one of the things I tell people 2 things. One is in terms of it is a tragedy to me that people think that they don't matter. Oh my God, that just is a stake in my heart. Because everybody, no matter if you are the lowest person on the totem pole or whoever, you have influence. I don't care who you are, what you do, where you live, you have influence in your family, in your community, in your neighbors, in your teamwork or your teammates. Everybody has influence. by who you are. No one can take that away from you. You could be in prison and you can still influence people because of who you are. So the first thing is to just recognize that you have influence. It's when people feel completely like they don't matter. It's like, it doesn't matter what I do. Nobody cares. It's like, believe that you matter. Believe who you are, who you show up in the day to be makes a difference. Even if it makes a difference to one person, then don't diminish that. It's like, hey, wow, I really influenced one person today. So that's the first one, is really believe that you are an influencer by who you are. And then in terms of be that influencer of what the change, it's the great Gandhi saying, right? Be the change that you want to be. If you want your organization to be more creative, then be more creative. And then don't be fussed when everyone still says, because they've been there, done that, Suzanne, no, we can't do that. No, it's like, then be Teflon. It's like, just don't hear. It's like, okay, great. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, try it again. Try it again. Try it again. Because eventually somebody will listen, either because out of sheer, it's like, I can't listen to another one of Suzanne's ideas. We must have to do one of them at least so we can, you will have, or like, we are going to keep, like, demonstrate your tenacity about being committed to the change, because otherwise you're just the flavor of the day too, just like you complain about other people. It's like, be committed to be the change you want to be and keep doing it. Now, in the world of, if you are literally in an organization that is so toxic that it is killing your soul and you literally aren't making any progress and you feel like you can make a difference, don't stay there. Go somewhere else where you can. And there's no panacea. You can't just, because, hey, people have asked me all the time in terms of the environment. It's like, why didn't you just go start a green company? Why are you in like the dinosaur oil and gas? It's like, well, because somebody's got to be here to change this place. Like, oh, it takes those people to be in organizations to change them. But I also recognize, just like I did at Imperial, at some level, at some point in time, you've made all the change that you are capable of making, and now you need to go and make it somewhere else. And then be courageous and go find that someplace else.
I think those are really wise words, and I think that's just useful information for our listeners out there, where it's really, you can get to a certain place, and if you're not having that impact and you're not seeing those changes that you want to see, start over. And it's going to be scary, but take the risk, believe in yourself, and follow, I guess, that passion. So I'm just kind of in awe a little bit listening to you, Suzanne, because I feel like you've got such a fascinating story, but just on an individual level, you're a fascinating person and also really funny in how you tell your story too. Going back, I guess, to the industry, and I guess putting it in context for those listeners out there, being in that world in Calgary where it's oil and gas heavy focus in industry, like you're saying, so many people are so profit driven. Outside of your company and Imaginia and what you've been doing since 2013, are there any, I guess, big industry changes that you've seen in general in the oil and gas or in the energy world?
I really wish I could report a whole bunch, and I don't want to say. The most important message about Imaginia is the message of and. I do not want to create more polarization that I'm trying to actually eradicate. So I don't want people to hear this podcast and hear, oh, Suzanne thinks she's right and everyone else is wrong. I think I'm better and everyone else is right. That is not the message. It's like, I just see a different future and I'm willing to put all my time, money, and energy into showing it's possible. If people want to come, great. If they don't, I try not to judge them. But in terms of, the changes that I've seen, they aren't that many that I see, and maybe I don't see them all. The positive, I'm like a pathological optimist, which really annoys some people, but I believe that the downturn is at least, making people more aware or forcing them, whatever you want to call it, into contemplating that things need to be different. And that is awareness is the first stage to change. If you're not aware of it and you don't have any motivation to do that, then there's very little motivation to save the planet at $100 oil because they just want to make lots of money. So perhaps when things aren't working the way that they want, that maybe they will do some changes both organizationally as well as, how they're participating in the world. And I'm just going to be hopeful that there are lots of people in my industry, I see them all the time, that have moral conflict. We live in Calgary. We live like an hour from nature's playground. There's lots of people that care. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to destroy the planet today. Nobody does that. But we've been conditioned so long to just not recognize our impact and think that, well, this is the only job I have that, pays the bills and takes care of my family. So that's one of the reasons we've got such positive responses when people hear this and message saying, oh my God, I can actually do what I need to provide for my family and perhaps, not wreck the planet at the same time. Where do I sign up? There's lots of people that want to change, but we've been conditioned so long to just believe this is the only pathway. So one of the most powerful responsibilities Imagineer has is to show it's possible. That I get that not everybody can see what I can see. But once they go, it's like, oh my God, you can do both. Well, let's go do that too. And so my deep hope is that when we demonstrate the changes that we're doing, that you can have all three of planet, people, profit, then that they will follow. And that's where we're going to see some really big changes in the industry. And there are companies that are out there trying to do better stuff. So I don't want to diminish those, but I'm really hoping that we can't tweak our way to greatness. We have to be bold and courageous.
Yes, I think that's a key message that's coming out of everything you've shared so far, that bold and courageous piece. With Imagineer, I guess something else that I'm curious about, and that on a personal level, and I think as a millennial, really, millennials stereotypically, they want to get in there, they want to make a difference, they want to have an impact, and they don't want to be that cog in the wheel like you were talking about earlier. And so with kind of your organizational model and the culture and the atmosphere that you want to have, I'm wondering, how does it play out in terms of running your organization with no middle management, with the people on the bottom level, I guess. How do you bring them in, or how do you know that they're going to make good decisions or take accountability for things? I guess, how does that play out? It's good information for entrepreneurs out there, because I think there really is some merit and some really interesting concept there. But how does that play out in real life, and how do you make it work?
That's potentially a long question, but some of the short answers are, one, there's a very large culture shock when you come to Imagineer. Now, I think it's good, but we have to retrain people's brains, and they come very willing to be retrained, but you do have a certain level of culture shock. It's like, whoa. So some of the key things in terms of, one, you have to retrain your brain that you don't work for a boss, you work for your teammates. And let me assure you, that is a way more powerful motivator, because nobody wants to actually be the weak link in the chain, as opposed to, having one person that you have to just make sure they're happy with you. It's like your teammates, you have to sort of, contribute and make sure that they're getting what they need to or from you. And it's just a powerful motivator when you switch your brains into saying, oh my God, I work for my teammates, and not just one, all of them. So it can be actually overwhelming from an accountability. So we teach people, how to be, you can't come to Imagineer and be successful if you fundamentally cannot do what you say you're going to do, because no one's going to check you. Other than your teammates might be disappointed. And that's where, other leaders of traditionally say, well, how can you do that? You have to control people. It's like, listen, this is how it works, is that if they aren't doing it, it will be obvious, because they're not contributing to their teammates. And out of all the teammates, somebody's going to call them out. It's like, they didn't give me this, I'm needing this, I'm held up by that. It will be obvious of when you're not contributing. Because the one thing we have, one of sort of the invisible structures is called ANCs, accomplishments and commitments. So every Friday before you go home, you must fill out, and it's super simple. It takes you like tops 15 minutes. It's your discipline around self-management. You have to think about your week. It's like, what are the top 3-4 things that I did this week that added value to this organization? And you have to put them down. And then you have to say, what are the 3 or 4 things next week that I am going to commit to my teammates to do that is going to add the most amount of value? And then you put these down, and everybody can see everybody's. Now, I read them all. Some people only read their tribes or, the people they're most, but everybody can see everybody's commitment. And then every week you have to steward to, did I do what I say I'm going to do this week? It's super simple. And people, like week after week, you become accountable because you'll be busted because you have to report on it every week of whether you did what you said you're going to do without a middle manager. You don't need a middle manager to do that. It's more powerful when they self-manage.
Wow, this is truly amazing. And I've heard it before, but hearing it again, it's like the first time I've heard it. It's very impactful, Suzanne. So going back to when you were 21 years old, if you could look back and talk to your 21-year-old self about career, what would you say, given all that you've experienced?
Another great question. I would probably only tell myself one thing, and that is to trust yourself. Like, intuition is one of the greatest gifts that we have as human beings, and the business world does not, for the most part, recognize nor acknowledge that. It's that your intuitive self knows 1 billion times more things than your linear brain does, guaranteed. And your higher self knows where you need to be, when you need to be there, how you need to be there. So meditation is the best thing I ever learned how to do in my life. I would have told myself, learn meditation sooner, but I probably then wouldn't have appreciated it. So, everything happens at the right time in your life. But the most important part, like know yourself, trust yourself.
That is so simple, yet it's tough for a lot of people, and I think that meditation is misunderstood. But just hearing it from you, I hope inspires people to make more time and chisel out more time in their lives to really think and meditate and trust themselves. And I think the next question is, I can't imagine you ever retiring, Suzanne, but when you think of retiring, I guess, what do you picture ever retiring? And what 3 goals do you want to accomplish between now and when you actually retire, however you define that?
Retirement is a weird mental construct in our society. It sort of suggests that, okay, I'm just going to suffer for most of my known adulthood, and then somehow in magical date, then I'll be happy. It's like, wow, I don't get that. So that's why in that mental construct, I'm never going to retire, because in my mind, if you don't enjoy every day and every day is amazing, then you're missing something, because that's the way life is supposed to be. To me, retirement just hopefully means you have more options, available of how you contribute in the world, but that isn't. What do I want to do? And I'm going to live till I'm about 140, because I got so many ideas in my head that I have to actually execute. So it's going to be a long time before we get there. But the 3 things, oh God. Number 1 is we are going to change the world with imagination. That's number 1 for sure. Second one is I want to be part of raising the collective consciousness of the world in general. We need more kindness. We need more compassion. We need more spirituality belongs in business, because it's who we deeply are. We need more connection to each other. The world appears to be going to hell in a handbasket right now, and we just have to collectively want that better future that is full of peacefulness and mindfulness, and I want to be part of that, however that shows up. And number 3 is I am always interested in what else I'm going to do. So I have 5 books that I'm writing. God, I got to finish one of them. But my latest one is called On My Planet, and it's going to be all the things I change on my planet, because I got lots of ideas of how I want to change healthcare and education and politics and everything. So I'll try to live to 140. So I'm going to hopefully get all those done too before I leave this world.
And a couple of more trips to Richard's Island, hopefully, to flesh some of these out.
Now, so yeah.
Well, I just think it's great that you are writing, Suzanne, because that was the thought in my head when you said I'll live to 140 with all these ideas. I was thinking, well, your next endeavor better be to write a book. So to find out you're already writing 5, yeah, you got to get at least.
I got to finish those too. So I got a lot of things to do. Actually, more importantly, I have a lot of things to be. It's more we're a society that is addicted to being busy, and we need a society that understands being is actually more powerful than doing. It makes doing so much easier, more factual, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, and another I think good lesson or words of wisdom. And it even comes with that, be the change. You have to be the one you'll do it if you are it. so I guess
I will leave with the one important thing is people will remember who you are, not what you did.
Very wise, very wise.
So focus on who you are being in the world rather than just being always, freaked out about, how many things you have to do in the world. People won't remember what you do. They will remember who you are. Right?
And that actually leads perfectly into my next question. And it's a little funny because you said you'll probably never retire. But one question that we tend to ask most of our guests is what, if you picture yourself at the end of your career or at the end of your life, what would you want to hear people say about you at that time? And I guess, with what you've shared, it's not about what you've done, it's about who you are. So what would you want to hear people say?
I really hope that hopefully they say a few nice things, but the only one that will really be the most important that I will sort of going, yes, is that if they said, Suzanne made this world a better place than what she found, right? Is that I want to be somebody that makes this world for the next 10 generations a better world. I want them to go back and they want to write in the history books. It's like, thank you for somebody that was, courageous enough or bold enough or crazy enough or stupid enough, whatever they want to call me, that just said, we can do better, right? We can do more. I can be more. And to just saying the world was different because I was here. And hopefully in a positive way, not in a negative way. So I just want to be, I want to know that I left it all on the table. If it's not good enough for people, I can't do anything with that. But that I left every gift, talent, capability, idea that I had, and I left it on the table, I will leave this world with a big smile on my face.
That's really powerful. And I think if everybody had that same wish and that same drive, the world would be an amazing, amazing place, and even so much more of a better place, I think. One last question for you tonight, Suzanne. I'm wondering what you're most grateful for.
Wow, that is another long list. Gratitude is one of the most important things to me because I am so blessed. I wake up, I swear to God, I'm the luckiest person on this planet every morning. But what I am most grateful for is to have found out through, that's another long story, an interview with you, but I've really found out, who I really am. And I really love who I really am. And I'm prepared to be who I really am every day. That's what I'm most grateful for.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a guest with us today, Suzanne. I feel like I need to have several more conversations with you off air because you are a fascinating woman and you've shared, I think, some really powerful messages and some really great advice with our listeners tonight. So thank you so much for speaking with us. And with that, we'll go to our break, and Laura and I will be back in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are back, and in our summaries tonight, Laura, do you want to start off?
Absolutely. I just don't even know where to start. I'm speechless, but I will. What I found about this interview was that there were so many what I call golden nuggets or takeaways for people. And I really I liked learning about Imagineer. I'd like to learn more about it, but the focus on people, planet, and profit, just having all three of those on the forefront rather than just profit or even lip service to people, I can really tell that Suzanne truly lives and focuses on these on a daily basis. And I like the combination of the three words. So I'm going to give three words back at how I would describe Suzanne would be humorous, humble, and hell-bent. So she's hell-bent to make a difference, and she has that innate drive and energy around being bold and different and innovative. And I just love that. I think the world needs more CEOs like Suzanne. And again, her humor, as Megan said earlier, is just wonderful. She's a great storyteller. And I like how she's a pathological optimist. I think that too often we look at optimists and we say, wow, they don't see the full truth, or they're just living with their head in the clouds. And I think that Suzanne really showed us that she's an optimist, but she delivers. She makes a difference. She executes on things. And I think that optimism and that belief in the nature of people being good and people having the best intentions is missing in a lot of cases. And I think it's too bad. And from our field of psychology, that's how we think. We think the best in people. Otherwise, why would we focus on psychology? But it's just great to hear an energy executive speak about being a pathological optimist. And another point that Suzanne made was for people to do what they love, what they're amazing at, and the things that really move them. And when we're doing our career counseling work at Canada Career Counseling and Calgary Career Counseling, how we define this is following your passions, doing what you love, following what your talents are, and that's what you're amazing at, and then doing the things that move you, and we use the word values to describe that. So really living and working according to your values, and far too often people don't take the time to step back and do things according to who they are, what they're amazing at, and what moves them. And I think that Suzanne's advice to people who are stuck in toxic organizations or trying to make a difference within a large bureaucratic organization, I think that was spot on in that try to make a difference, be tenacious, but also know when to walk away and find someplace else that will appreciate you more. And I think Suzanne showed us that can be done by leaving her organization and going on to do her entrepreneurial adventures. And some really good one-liners in terms of being is more powerful than doing, making the time to contemplate and think about what's important to you, taking the time to meditate. But whether you call it meditation or whether you focus on journaling or gratitude, I think taking the time to pause and contemplate your life and your work and your goals is extremely powerful. And her other quote about people will remember who you are, not what you did, I think that is also bang on in terms of we're really focused on doing and producing and do. We're doing all over ourselves. And I think that, again, that gets in the way of people really listening to their intuition and being guided by what they're truly meant to do. So I will let Megan have a turn here. I could go on and on, but Megan, take over.
No problem. So I guess to start, I really picked up on some of those same things about Suzanne and her story that you did, Laura. But I think really across the shows that we've done, we've had a ton of interesting guests with a ton of interesting stories. Everyone's story is unique, but Suzanne is just a fascinating person. So I think she really just breaks out of a lot of stereotypes, being someone who's a CEO in the energy world, yet so passionate about the environment and changing the world for the better. And having her fitness and being, a fitness instructor, a writer, it's just like, whoa, I need some lessons in time management. So really happy to have had Suzanne on the show. I think some of the things that stand out to me as well are just her innate confidence. And like she said, her optimism, and really everything that she talked about, even in terms of being fired from a job, she could spin into that positive. And I think it's so nice to see. And I think it just highlights a way that people could be and that would be so beneficial for themselves. Being that optimist and seeing the positive Even when things seem negative, where's that silver lining? And what are you going to do with that silver lining? Who are you going to be with that silver lining? So that's one thing that stood out to me. Also, I guess just obviously that innovative piece. And I think even when she mentioned the idea, the economy in Alberta being so cyclical, and, people make so many excuses and can be so negative about the economy. And it's not to say that the economy doesn't impact in people in negative ways. And I wouldn't want to have that message come across at all. But I really like the message of, find your own economy or build your own economy. And I think Suzanne has been able to do that in her career where, what we're doing isn't working. It's not sustainable. So what are we going to do about it? She figured out new ways to build and play in the energy world, but also help the environment and build a sustainable future. So she's come up with her own economy, and hopefully one that people and energy companies will emulate in the future. So I think that's great. Something else I think that stood out to me, just for the entrepreneurs listening out there, I think the way that Suzanne wants to run or does run her companies is amazing. And it's also a great model for millennials out there, because it just fits with that way of thinking so much about really being loyal to your colleagues and accountable to your colleagues. I guess taking accountability is that big piece, being able to make decisions. So even if you're not the CEO running the company, how can the people in your company make those decisions, have impact? And I think really what Suzanne highlighted was knowing that big picture and the big direction of the company and not being siloed into little sectors where you don't understand the other functions or facets of the company. And so really being a collaborative entity, adapting skills and changing when you need to change, and not just doing it for the sake of doing it. So really, again, coming back to that innovation piece. And again, even her sense of people and knowing and understanding as a CEO, and, money's one of those three pillars, but it's not the main pillar, that people's personal lives, of course, they impact their careers, and there are whole people coming into the company, and seeing that as a benefit as opposed to something you want to push down or make everybody like robots. And obviously, in being a successful CEO, building 5 companies from scratch, this isn't just a lovely story she's sharing. This is life. This is her life and the lives of all of the employees of her company. So I think it's just such a great message to share, and really something that entrepreneurs hopefully more and more will latch onto it and start to run their organizations in that way as well. So other than that, what stood out to me? I think that level of being humble, like you mentioned, Laura, that stood out to me as well. She, with all these great things that she's done, she really spoke more about who she was than what her accomplishments were. And really that collaborative piece of, she might be the CEO, it might have been her idea, but all these other people are bringing their skill sets and their ideas to the table as well. So from there, I guess, those are the things that really stood out to me. And just the fact, I guess, to leave it off, that Suzanne is living her values. What is important to her, what she sees as important for the world, for other people, that's what she's doing. And again, it comes back to that message that being is more important or more significant than doing. And so I think that's a good place to leave off tonight, and a good message. And I think it's just going to spark so much thinking from the listeners out there. So to anyone out there who is listening, I'm curious about your ideas and how you want to impact the world. And if you haven't made that change or taken those steps, or you're having trouble with that, get in touch with us, share your ideas, and you can do that through Canada Career Counseling, because we're so interested to hear about you and what you thought of Suzanne's story and how you're going to impact the world. So with that, I will say that I hope everyone has a great evening and a great work week. and keep these lessons in mind as you go into your week. So have a great evening, and we'll be back next Sunday.
The career discussion doesn't stop here. For more information about how to transform your career, visit CanadaCareerCounseling.com. And remember to tune in next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Radio Station for the next episode of Career Cravings.